going to show you how to do a modified drawstring bind off for a hat on the new knitting board rotating double knit loom. Pretty cool little loom. It gives you the ability to make a hat in the round, but to double knit it. Anyway, so I've made my hat, and now I'm to the process where I need to get the top of my hat cinched up tight and off of the loom. Alright, the first thing I need to do is take my working yarn and wrap it around the outside of the pegs, at least one go round, and cut it off. Okay. Now back to my starting peg. The way this is going to work is I am going to move 2 pegs to the inner loom, the next 2 pegs, or the inner row, excuse me, and then the next 2 pegs I'm going to move those stitches to the outer side. So I'm going to move peg 1 and peg 2 from the outside pegs to the corresponding inside pegs. And I found it easiest, since I'm doing 2 of them, if I have my loom tool and then either a cable needle or even a bobby pin works fine. Something to hold that second stitch so it doesn't just fall off. So what I do is I just peg 1, peg 2. So I'm going to use my cable needle, just secure peg 2, pick up both of them and move them to the inside of the loom. There's 1, there's 2. The next 2 pegs, which are peg 3 and 4, I'm going to take the stitches that are on the inside row and move them to the outside. Hello, Bailey. Might have to call this Bailey hat since she's yapping at me this morning. So I've secured that stitch, pick this one up, and now I'm just going to pick them both up and move them directly across. Okay, so let's see if you can see here. So my first 2 empty pegs, I've moved them to the inside. My next 2 pegs, I moved the inside ones to the outside. I'm going to do this the whole way around the loom, alternating from moving the stitches from the inside to the outside. Okay. Okay, and then the next 2 pegs from the inside, 1 and 2. I'm going to pick those up and bring them directly across. Okay, now we move from the outside to the inside. And I would wait till you have both stitches secure on the pegs before trying to remove your tools. Alright, I'm going to finish doing this pattern of moving 2 from the outside to the inside, and then 2 from the inside to the outside, outside to the inside. I'm going to finish this and we'll come back. I just wanted to show you how well a bobby pin works in place of a cable needle. If you don't have one of these, you don't have to go buy one. Just about every female on the planet has a bobby pin laying around somewhere. I'm going to move these 2 outer ones to the inside. So the bobby pin, you just slide right down like you would a cable needle. Oops, don't want to split my yarn there. There you go. And now the stitch is secure on that. Secure that stitch with a cable needle. And now I can pull them both up over and place them on their respective inside pegs. And then remove my bobby pin, remove my cable needle. Okay, now you can see I've gone around the loom and I've moved two in pairs of two, alternated from the outside to the inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, the whole way around the loom. It works with this stitch pattern. Now, there may be stitch patterns out there that it's going to be so tight you won't be able to alternate to either side. If that's the case, no worries. Just move all of your stitches to the inside of the loom. The rest of it you can do pretty much the same way, and I'll explain as we get going here a little bit. But again, if your stitches are just too tight and you can't alternate inside, outside, just move all of your stitches inside the loom. Okay, so if you remember, I had cut my working yarn to go once around the loom. Now I'm going to take a separate piece of yarn, measure again around the loom, and we're going to cut it so that I have two pieces of yarn that I'm going to work with. My first yarn that I had was the working yarn, and now I have a separate second piece of yarn. With this second piece of yarn, I'm going to start with this one first, and I'm going to start on the inside of the loom. Alright, let's make it. We're going to make a slip knot with my separate piece of yarn, and I'm just going to put it on an empty peg on the inside of the loom. Now with my loom pick, I'm going to act as though I'm going to purl through two of the loops that are on the inside. Remember, each peg now has two loops on it. And instead of purling, I'm going to pull that yarn the whole way up through. So in essence, I have fed the yarn through those two loops, securing those two loops. Going to do it again on the second peg. If it is easier for you, you can just take a yarn needle, thread this yarn through the needle, and then you just can sew up through each of the stitches on the inside. But so right now all we're going to do is we're just going to go around the loom on the inside with my separate piece of yarn, and we're going to secure all of these stitches onto my separate piece of yarn. That yarn doesn't want to behave. Okay. I'm going to shut the camera off again because it'll get boring for you to watch me doing this the whole way around the loom. I'll be back. Alright, I'm about done getting all of the inside loops secured on my second strand of yarn. Earlier I mentioned if your stitch pattern was too tight that you couldn't move your stitches half on the inside and half on the outside pegs, that you should move them all to the inside pegs. If that is the case and you have to move everything to the inside pegs, then I would suggest you move all the inside pegs, stop at this point, and then go watch my video on modified drawstring bind off, because that will show you how to remove the loops and gather your hat top when you have just one row of pegs. Alright, back to this one. So now I have gone through and I have secured all of my inside loops on my on my extra strand of yarn, and now I can just go through and lift those off of the loom because they are totally secure. They're not going to fray, they're not going to unravel. Okay, so I'm going to go do that. And I could have placed this strand of yarn behind the empty pegs. It 6 of one, half dozen the other. And my working yarn's all over the place. And back to the beginning. And here's my slip knot that I had placed on the empty peg, remember? Okay. So now what I like to do at this point, this is my beginning and my end. At this point, I'm going to tie these in a bow. Don't tie them in a knot because you are going to have to cinch them up tighter. But if you tie it in a bow right now, then it won't come undone while you're working on the rest of it. Okay? So now I still have all of the pegs on the outside of the loom. All of the stitches still on the outside. So this was my working yarn. Remember, we wrapped it around and cut it. Now we're going to do the same thing. Simply go through and act as though you're going to purl the 2 stitches on that peg and pull it up. Act as though you're going to purl the 2 stitches and pull the working yarn up through. I'm going to put the yarn behind there. Purl. Act as though you're going to purl and pull the yarn up through. Act as though you're going to purl, pull the yarn up through. Okay, I'm going to shut the camera off while I finish going around the loop. Alright, we're back. I'm down to my last 2 stitches. Also, if you should get to the end and you've realized, oh my goodness, I cut my working yarn too short, don't panic. Just go around and lift off some of the stitches that you had, the early on stitches. That'll loosen up the yarn enough, probably give you more than enough to finish. Alright, so I have gone around, secured all my stitches, so now I can go around and simply just take all of those stitches off of the loom as well. And I'm just going to show you this. I am going to go ahead and just wrap this a few times and secure it so that I don't do something stupid. Okay, so that can sit there and now I don't have to worry about it. And I'm just going to take all of these off. And here we are back at the beginning. Alright, and I'm going to take my working yarn back off. Alright, my hat is now completely off of the loom. Let me pull it back up through here. Okay, so here's my hat. I know the dark yarn makes it a little hard to see, but here's my inside stitches, and then this is my outside. I'm going to cinch up my inside stitches first, so I'm going to undo my bow. Okay, so I'm going to take my 2 inside strings, undo the bow that I had knit or had tied, and just cinch it up as tight as I can. I just usually make a square knot here. So that's left over right, and cinch it as tight as I can, hold it, and then right over left. And all the while keeping that as tight as I can. And then I'll just do it once more for good measure. So that's my inside. Okay, that was my inside. Now I'm going to take the working yarn that was for my outside stitches and snug it up, and you can see all the stitches gather in there, making it a nice tight. I am going to use a crochet hook, and I'm going to pull all of these stitches through to the inside of my hat. Stick my crochet hook up through there. I'm going to grab the 2 stitches, pull those through, and now let me grab my working yarn. I'm going to pull it through. So here's my working yarn, wrap it around. I'm going to pull him through too, and I'm going to turn my head inside out. I'm going to do my knots on the inside of my hat then. Okay. So this is my working yarn now. And these were the 2 that I had just tied off into a knot. So now I'm just going to pull the working yarn for those outer stitches as tight as I can. And I'm just going to pick up one of these strands to knot it. Again, do a square knot so it's left over right. And again, I'm going to pull that as tight as I can. And then right over left. And then I always do one more for good measure. And now all of these strands here, all of those strands there, they can just be cut off and then woven in when you weave in your ends. So there is the top of that hat. You can see it makes pretty flat, nicely cinched up, not a lot of bulk up there. Okay. Now all I have to do is do my cast on edge and I have a hat. All right, thanks for watching.